Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bearcats Mean Business, the official podcast of the University of Cincinnati's Carl H. Lindner College of Business. My name is Grant Freaking, and I work for Lindner's Marketing and Communications team. On today's episode, we will explore how Lindner's engaged experts solve everyday business problems. And I'm joined by a pair of accomplished Lindner faculty members who will explain how research at Lindner affects the lives of business professionals and consumers, as well as how students can learn from and work alongside leading researchers. Dr. Suzanne Masterson is the Senior Associate Dean of Faculty, Research, and Lindner Culture, and is also a professor of management. Dr. Craig Froehle is a professor of Operations, Business Analytics, and Information Systems. Welcome, Suzanne and Craig.
Thanks, Grant. It's great to be here.
Yep, thanks very much.
Thanks again for being here. Suzanne, our audience includes prospective students and their parents or guardians who may not fully grasp why research is valuable not only to the students taught by Lindner faculty, but also to everyday consumers. Can you shed some light on this?
Sure. For our students, research is valuable because it's the source of the foundational knowledge they'll take with them into the workplace. The University of Cincinnati is known as the birthplace of cooperative education, which means that our students learn that foundational content in our classrooms, and then they go out and practice it in real-world situations. So the research that's conducted across our disciplines, from accounting and econ to finance, marketing, operations, and information systems, provides a deep understanding of businesses, people, and policies, and they can then go and take that and apply it at work, helping our students to be more successful. For example, I teach organizational behavior, and my students leave my class knowing the science underlying employee motivation, hopefully helping them to both self-motivate once they're in the workplace, but as well to manage others. Beyond our students, the research conducted by our faculty helps have better outcomes for many, such as our consumers, healthcare patients, and entrepreneurs. For example, some of our marketing professors study elements of shopping experiences, including queuing, crowding, music. We've got a person who studies earworms, signage, and all of those factors contribute to consumer behavior and the satisfaction that people have with shopping experiences.
Excellent. Never fail to underestimate how far the tentacles of business learning can extend, right?
Exactly.
Craig, why is it important to both your career and your relationship with your students that you are an active researcher?
That's a really good question. So as a research faculty member, I have two primary functions, right? Dissemination and discovery. That first one, dissemination, is largely the teaching I do. It could be speaking to consulting with companies also, or working within our community, or sharing at an academic or professional conference, or heck, participating in a podcast, right? That second part, discovery, is really important because it helps ensure that what we're disseminating, what we teach, our students and or other organizations, is really the best information we have, the most relevant and the most rigorously developed that we can provide them. While some faculty here at Lindner are primarily engaged in dissemination and teaching, we're really fortunate to have a huge variety of talented faculty who are deeply committed to and really skilled in carrying out the research and discovery too.
Awesome, thanks. Suzanne, how can and how do current Lindner students get involved in the college's vast research ecosystem?
Well, for many of our undergraduate students, a first opportunity to get involved in research is by taking the marketing research course, which covers a lot of the how-tos of marketing research and can be a gateway to other research opportunities.
I see.
Students also interested in research can look for opportunities to get involved with some of our centers and institutes. A big one for our undergraduates is the Count-Ubel Economics Institute, which uses a lot of their undergraduate students in their research. Some of our capstone courses in different disciplines also offer an opportunity to get involved in field projects, which often involve research. Some of those are in entrepreneurship or in business analytics. And then there's a summer undergraduate research program at the university level in which undergraduate students can get paired with faculty or with doctoral students to work on ongoing research projects. But the best advice I would give to any student who wants to get involved in research is to reach out, talk to their faculty members, explore what kinds of research they're working on, and ask to get involved.
Yep, always reach out for help, or if you're interested, of course. Let's personalize this a little bit. Craig, I'd like to touch on your personal research interests. Where do those lie, and can you walk listeners through your research process, please?
Sure. My field is operations management, so my research primarily looks at understanding how work gets done. I focus on service businesses and specifically healthcare organizations like hospitals and clinics. So I'm often studying the barriers to delivering safe, consistent, and timely care to patients and how to remove those barriers. Sometimes that means I'm looking at how best to use different resources within a hospital. Other times I might be studying how physicians and nurses do the work they do. Part of my research also examines the role and impact of fairness and ethics in business decision making.
Okay, these are all great examples of your research helping solve business problems in everyday life. Do you have any other examples that you didn't list there?
Sure, I'll give you a couple of specific examples real quick. One of the first problems I ever studied in a hospital setting was with Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Patients and their families there were facing some potentially long waits for their x-rays and scans to be read by radiologists. So I worked with some physicians there to develop a new method for automatically prioritizing waiting patients so that those with the most urgent need to know their results were served first, right? So kind of a queuing problem. Okay. That project produced a lot of benefits for patients as well as the hospital. It resulted in a U.S. patent and ended up being commercialized and put into practice in quite a few hospitals across North America. So the second example is quite a bit more recent. A Lindner doctoral student and I developed a model that helps emergency departments deal with overcrowding and staff shortages. It's based on the idea of capacity flexibility. So, for example, you'll walk into some restaurants and you might see that the tables there can seat 4 patrons, but they can be separated into two-person tables. Okay. Right? So that's that concept of capacity flexibility. So we figured out a way to use that concept in an emergency department so that they can serve more patients with less waiting, all without really having to spend any more on medical staff. And that's being implemented right now at UC's new emergency department.
I'm sure the stakeholders there are very thrilled with your research and its success. Suzanne, where do your research interests lie, and how would you describe your research process?
Sure. My broad research discipline is organizational behavior, or all of the things that occur with people in organizations. And I'm particularly interested in workplace relationships and fairness perceptions. So I research questions such as, when do employees feel fairly treated at work? Why might managers choose to engage in behaviors that will be considered unfair? How do people act differently in organizations depending on whether they feel fairly or unfairly treated? And what is the impact on the relationships between supervisors and employees? Some of my more recent research has considered workspace issues, such as working in a private office, cubicle, or open space, and how that might affect workplace relationships and employee performance. When developing research questions, I often think about what I've experienced or what I've heard from other people, and then dig into past research to figure out what has already been studied and what remains to be examined. I study these questions using a lot of different methods, but most often through surveys and personal interviews.
Okay, leaving no stone unturned, I see. And how does your research help solve business problems in everyday life?
Well, one of my favorite research projects was my dissertation. I proposed that the more fairly an organization treated its employees, the more fairly the employees would treat their customers, ultimately resulting in better outcomes for the organization, what I called a trickle-down model of fairness. My study supported this trickle-down effect, suggesting that organizations perform better when they treat their employees more fairly. And fairness really doesn't cost organizations a lot of money. People feel fairly treated when HR policies are consistent, accurate, and representative, when employees feel like they're treated with dignity and respect,
of course,
and when information is communicated openly and honestly. So not things that cost a lot of money. So my research shows that benefits that managers and organizations can reap just by behaving fairly, and this creates better workplaces for everyone. Across different studies, my colleagues and I have demonstrated the positive effects of fairness on performance, creativity, satisfaction, commitment, and positive workplace relationships. And so given how much time we all spend working, I'm glad that my research findings identify ways to help make that time spent at work more satisfying and beneficial for everyone.
Thank you for sharing. And workplace is an evolving topic to this day, as we
Absolutely.
all know. Cool. Craig, what would your advice be to current high school students thinking about engaging in research while they're studying in college?
That's a really good question. I think just generally, as Suzanne hinted at, be proactive, right? If you're really interested in a specific research topic, first talk with your high school counselor or a teacher that you have who may be involved in that space. They may know about some resources that you can tap into or class options you can take that will help you prepare to do research on that topic once you get to college. when you're looking at colleges, right, you're going to want to look for universities or colleges who have an active research faculty member or a department or a curriculum that is going to allow you to get access to some research opportunities. Right. And once you get to college, right, if you know of a topic or area you're passionate about, or you find a class that really tickles your interests, don't wait for those opportunities to come to you. Go make them happen, right? Reach out, initiate conversations with your professors, even in your freshman year. You can also certainly talk to your college advisor about it too once you're assigned one. Basically, in short, don't be afraid to try and make things happen, right? A casual conversation is one of the ways that great research careers can start.
Right, and I think I can safely speak for all faculty that you guys are here to help students, right? It's part of the job. You all wouldn't be involved in teaching higher education in the business field if you didn't like your interactions with students, correct?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right. Suzanne, before we go, can you let our listeners know about some of our faculty's recent research discoveries and maybe some of their media appearances?
Sure. We have really interesting and impactful research happening across all of our disciplines. So let me give you just a brief taste of the variety of topics investigated by our faculty.
Great.
Accounting professor Lena Shee's research stream focuses on interlocked firms. And what we mean by that is organizations that share members of their board of directors or audit committees, and how that affects financial reporting and information transfer. Economics professor David Brasington studies housing prices, especially as related to fire and police services, school districts, and parks and recreation, something that a lot of people can relate to. Finance professor Mehmet Saglam specializes in understanding high-frequency trading and the role of speed in financial markets, and he's really made some impact on understanding how your distance from New York or Chicago really makes a difference in the speed of those trades and those micro differences that can make a big difference. Information systems professor Sheree Daniel focuses on virtual project teams, especially in open source software communities, something that's quite relevant as our world has changed to a more virtual place.
Of course.
Management professor Lauren Steed has a research stream that's focused on perfectionism in the workplace, and it's been featured in a recent Harvard Business Review article. And finally, marketing professor Josh Clarkson studies consumer expectations and self-control, and he's been featured in a number of media outlets recently, commenting on trends such as the Stanley Tumbler craze, which has gotten a lot of attention.
Yes, Josh has been quite popular lately, and listeners can find out more about our faculty and research on the faculty and research section of business.uc.edu. So thank you, Suzanne, for that nice overview. And thank you to Suzanne and Craig for joining me today. Be sure to catch future episodes of Bearcats Mean Business on Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Thanks for listening. Go Bearcats.